welcome everyone to the community roundtable for Shauntal's Library for Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. I am
What?
Libris. Sorry. I'm Libris, and I'm joined by my fellow community managers. You guys want to say hello?
Sure. I have a handle which is the Lasco Getter, Lasco Jita, whichever you prefer, but Windsor is easier. Windsor, like the castle.
Windsor. Hi.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm Emery. I would like to preface that I didn't read the entirety of the book because I've just got a lot of life stuff going on, but I to contribute to this discussion.
Yeah, we'll focus on the stories that all of us can comment on. But Emery, you were the one who picked this book because we were trying out the curator format, which we're not going to continue using, at least not until the community grows some more. But you were the one who picked this book. And so could you just tell us a little bit about what appealed to you about this one?
Yeah, it just had this air about it that I a lot of my decisions are based off of feelings, which is probably not the smartest thing to do, but it had this air about it that just like drew me into it. And it was also like a bunch of mini stories, which was good for me so that I can still, contribute to like what I can read because I am not a big reader usually. So I thought it'd be a good book just for me specifically.
Yeah, sounds good. You said that you didn't get to read all of the stories. How far did you get?
I read the first 4 stories. I actually just finished reading Climbing Nation today.
Okay.
I just I'm a bit behind, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's totally okay. And the interesting thing is that I actually felt like the first 3, but also 4 stories, those were probably the best ones in my opinion. There are definitely some later ones that are absolutely worth reading. But
I would say the first half is my favorite.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we were reading, as we were in the in the Discord channels, I was commenting how all of the stories felt like they had a point of inflection where either us as the reader like suddenly realizes something about the story or about the characters, or the mood changes or something like that. And that was really strong in the first few stories, and I felt that kind of went away for the later stories. And it's not necessarily that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, that didn't make the later stories bad, but they did kind of lose the like that one thing that was making every story feel really special. Did you have a similar experience to that at all?
Me personally, I did for like what I read. I like each story. I think like there's just like this key moment, and I think like it wasn't as like I definitely noticed that it wasn't as strong in like at the end of Climbing Nation, because or at least for me, I don't know about you two, but like at the end of the first story, I was like, it was just like a big, powerful moment that just sat with me for like at least an hour after that. Um, I personally didn't like Liddy First to Fly as much as the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that was one of your favorites, Libris.
Yeah.
But that still like stuck with me, um, like for a long time. And the one in the mall, I can't remember exact or Time Cubes, I think it was called.
Yeah, that was the name.
Yeah, that was like that wasn't like an experience, and like by the end, I feel like I lived through that.
Mm. Was
It
Time
might
Cubes your favorite?
it's it I think it was because it might be because like I have personally like dealt with just this feeling of like nothing matters and like the world feels like bleak and
Mm-hmm.
gray, like it was kind of described.
Mm-hmm.
um and I would spend a lot of my childhood just in my room hiding from everything instead of going out and interacting with the world and people in general. So I think it just really spoke to me on like a more personal level.
Mm-hmm. I did enjoy Time Cubes, but I think what made it less interesting to me was just that, or not less interesting, but maybe less powerful, is that it felt like it had two key elements to it. There was the life in the completely enclosed mall with the cafeterias that all serve the same thing, and it's just like flavored a little bit different or made to look a little different.
Mm.
And like the one walkway where you get to see what is outside, and it's just like a dry, sandy apocalypse. Like that felt really interesting and strong on its own. So then there was also the time cubes and the idea of being able to turn life or turn time back and forth like at will. That also seemed really interesting, and I just felt that those two aspects of the story, they were both really strong, but they felt really disconnected. So
Mm.
Um,
I would have been completely on board with a story completely dedicated to one of those elements. Or maybe if it was like a novella or a novel length story, then there would be more time to develop both of those and find the ways that they integrate properly. But I felt that in the scope of the story that we got, that didn't really happen.
Yeah. I still, out of the first four, I still think Time Cubes is still my favorite.
Hmm.
Because of probably for similar reasons to Emery. And also I wasn't able to find many video reviews on YouTube, but I did find basically Kim Fu has roughly a 1 hour interview, and as part of that, she mentioned some of the production process.
Hmm.
And this is probably a case where she was got the sense that she didn't want to get too deep into one element, such as that, maybe. You'll be able to watch it at some point. It was uploaded 5 months ago on the Writers Center.
Okay, share that
Uh,
link in the lounge, in the Past Books lounge.
yeah, I'll spot the link. It's on my phone, but I'll spot the link here and share it.
Yeah,
And probably throw it in the YouTube channel whenever.
yeah. I'd be interested to watching that interview. This is a very recent book, so it makes sense that there wouldn't be a lot of.
Yeah,
I think it
a
just
lot of media.
it just came out this year, right? Just earlier this year.
Correct.
So it makes sense that there wouldn't be a chance for a lot of reviews and things like that. But I'd definitely be interested in watching that interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would personally like. I would personally disagree with that they're disconnected.
Okay.
I don't think they're like physically connected, but um, when I was in that headspace in the past, like it genuinely felt like all of my life was like being confounded onto me, or like that I was circling through everything to come and everything that will come and everything that has come.
Mm.
And so I think it was more of a like an emotional connection, or like maybe that's not the right word. But rather than being a physical connection, it's more of a like a mental connection, because it really felt like the mall was like being portrayed as the headspace, and all the things within it kind of um, were just pieces of that. And then the apocalyptic exterior would be like, well, like this is why we wouldn't leave here, or this is like the kind of reasoning that people would give to not try to escape their headspace.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can see it as a sort of like the mall world is highly controlled, and so the idea of the time cube uh, giving you your own control over your own your own life. I could see how that is uh, a metaphorical connection there.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like I absolutely understood um, at the at the end of the story when the protagonist, whose name I have forgotten at the moment, but when she is in the Time Cube creator's apartment and is wandering around at night and finds the life size, the human size time cube and climbs inside. It did make sense for that character to wind the clock forward rather than backward.
mm-hmm.
I think I just would have uh, enjoyed it more. Maybe if it was just a little longer, if it was a novella or something, and we had more time to see uh, the different ways that the mall world is controlling and how it what it's like to live there, and also get more of the time cubes and of how they work, and maybe of the time cube creator and what his personality is like. Because I feel like
Yeah.
we didn't get a lot from him, did we?
No. It was very much Alice's story.
Mm-hmm. Alice, that's right.
Just having an understanding of where she's coming from. People who are in a similar space with depressive specialists. Was it? I can't remember the term. I'd have to flip through the pages
Right.
again, because I only had the chance to read through the first part or so.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it was mostly focused on that, and like I said, the interview gave me the impression, it reinforced my impression that she didn't really want to focus on the nitty-gritty of the technology, because if we focus too much on it, you end up in a space where you're thinking about, okay, you're turning the frog backwards or forwards. Where is it getting the nutrients? You're getting memories in the future. How does that work? It's not so much about that. It's more of an additional tool to explore the themes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It is an interesting tool, and it is interesting how it exists. It obviously at least makes enough sense that it wouldn't be something that the salesman would want to be known. He would definitely be hunted down pretty much regardless of which world he's in.
Sure. Yeah, I think that might actually be part of why it stood out to me. Was when Alice mentions that, like, she's going through all of the emotions and all the memories of her life that she hasn't lived through yet. I have a I have a pet peeve about timelines in time traveling stories. And
Yeah.
so my understanding of the time cube up to that point was that it was affecting aging, and not actually like the passage of time itself, right? So it was reversing the aging process, or advancing the aging process, but that time itself was time wasn't passing. The frog in the cube was just a frog in the cube, and it wasn't like experiencing life as a frog if it were outside the cube, which is what happens to Alice, right? When she's turning time forward, she's experiencing all of these things that would happen to her if she was not in the cube, but she is in the cube.
Yeah.
So that kind of took me out of it a little bit, and maybe if we had gotten more context about, because I felt that Alice's character was great and very well developed, but it was more about the context of the world that she lives in and how the technology works that I felt took me out of it, because the way that I expected the time cubes to work turned out to not be the case, and it turned out to not be the case right at the turning point of the climax of the story, and so that kind of reduced my enjoyment of it, I think.
I could see that.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the very first story, pre-simulation consultation, because it is it's the first story in the book, and it's such a strong story, and I think it's largely because of the way that it is told. What did you guys think of pre-simulation consultation?
I had the same impression. It's a really strong start. I think in the channel I mentioned that it reminded me of some game, and I think the game that I had in mind was two technically. One is Assassin's Creed, sorta, and another one is Remember Me, which you probably have never heard of.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, well, the name is very funny. So Remember Me, it's basically a standard third-person action game, but one of it's actually from the creators of Life is Strange. So you probably heard of that one.
Yeah.
But the gimmick of Remember Me is that you're playing as a character that when she defeats villains, typically what she does is she actually manipulates their memories, and I think there's some topics raised around the ethics of doing that, and also because of it's a common trope, of course, her memories have been messed around with as is. So it just came to mind as I was reading it. But otherwise, it's very interesting that the pre-simulation consultation, full name, thought a lot about it's presented as a transcript for a start. And I don't read too many things which are presented in that sort of way.
Yeah, I think it's relatively clear from the beginning that this is a transcript, because it isn't, it's entirely dialogue, right? You're only seeing what the characters are saying, but it's it doesn't become as clear until much later in the story how much is actually left out. I think, you know, for most of the time that I was reading the story, I was just picturing two people having a conversation. I think for most of it, it was unclear whether it was like an in-person consultation or if it was just I don't know, a Skype call or something like that. But then you get to that inflection point in the story where you realize there is a lot going on that isn't in the transcript, that isn't written down.
Yeah, I found that very fascinating after reading it, just that there was so much inferred that was not even alluded to, but you still like managed to piece it together. It's kind of it's just like a really, really strong start to the book.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never read anything by Kim Fu before. I didn't even pick up this book myself. I was the one who suggested it, but it was my wife who bought the book for me, and she went to the bookstore, I think, to get something for herself, but then she saw this and bought it for me. And yeah, it just seemed interesting, but I didn't know what to expect, right? I had no exposure to it before, and this unusual story, unusual in the way that it is told, and also so strong, got me like fully on board for the rest of the book. And if you guys want to say anything more about the story, please do. But I also want to comment on Liddy.
I think I want to hear I want to hear your input on Liddy, since that seems to be a less popular one among us so far.
I guess so. But yeah, for me, Liddy was the star of the book. Liddy the story, not Liddy the character, but was the strongest one. It's kind of interesting that when I first read it, I felt that I didn't like it quite as much as pre-simulation consultation. But it's definitely the one that's stuck with me the longest. And I think it's largely because, well, it's just a lot of things coming together, but I'm generally a sucker for magical realism. But also, I really enjoy stories where you can't quite tell what is real or what is true. So, like an unreliable narrator or something like that, right? And for most of the story, for most of Liddy, I had no reason to doubt that what was happening, that what the narrator was telling us was true. But then it gets to the very end, right? In the scene where Liddy is jumping off that dangerous diving cliff and hoping to figure out how to use her wings, how to fly before she hits the water. Just as the parents show up at the same, or the mothers, only the mothers, right? Like the narrator comments on that it's only the mothers and not the fathers. And that scene becomes so unbelievable. And even the narrator comments on how, well, now that the adults are here, the magic is dispelled, and I know that when I look down and I see Liddy in the water, she won't have her wings. That moment, it really gripped me. It was just like, oh shit, like that's this has been an unreliable narrator all along. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But then and I thought that's where the story was going to end, with on that note, but then it doesn't, and it turns it around again. And when Liddy comes out of the water, her wings are still there. They're just soaked, but there they are, and the adults all react to it, and it just, that moment really stuck with me.
Yeah, I would agree that like that was a very strong moment, and it's not that I didn't enjoy Liddy. I actually did enjoy it quite a lot. I and that was probably my favorite part of it. Was the sudden reveal that maybe this narrator was lying to us the whole time, or like blowing up the story more than it you know actually happened, or something.
Yeah, not really, not so much lying as just it's a game of pretend.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. And I think I picked up on themes of puberty in there.
Likewise.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I think I didn't like it as much. Maybe because I'm like a very visual person, and I was sitting there like, yeah, this she's got like this giant sack of pus on her leg. I was just like sitting there visualizing that, like, and that wasn't the most comfortable situation for me to be in. And I also felt that maybe the conclusion, like the story didn't feel like complete to me. It didn't feel like it ended. It was more like, oh, it's just over now. But I guess the way you put it kind of recontextualizes that as it's over now just because the adults are here. Kind of like an abrupt end, like, oh, it's sundown now, so your game of pretend is over.
Right.
Even if you were like right in the middle of some big climatic thing in your little story of fantasy.
Do you read a lot of short fiction?
That is mostly the kind of fiction that I read, just because it's hard for me to sit down and finish a full book, or like just a full like 100, 200 page story.
Right.
Because I get distracted very easily.
I was just curious because I feel like that's that kind of comment is a fairly common complaint for people who are used to longer stories and then encounter a short story and they're left with a feeling of, oh, what happens next, kind of thing. But in my experience at least, it's pretty common for short stories to leave you with that, because it's like a in this case, it could be a chapter in a longer book. You could go on and find out what happens to Liddy and her friends after that, but this story is about, like, the point of the story is getting to this stage of knowing that now knowing that this is real, and not about what happens afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, actually, like the what happens next moment is probably one of my like favorite endings to most stories. Like I don't know if you've seen Carol on Tuesday, but it's on Netflix. I don't know if it's on Canadian Netflix or but it's on
No,
American.
I haven't seen it.
But it doesn't have a super conclusive ending, but it still feels like all the loose ends have kind of fit into place where you can kind of imagine what happens next, or you can try to piece it together. And I just found the ending of Carol and Tuesday to be really, really powerful. Kind of like how a lot of this book has been. But I don't know why Liddy in particular didn't give me that same like wondrous feeling at the end.
That's interesting. Yeah. I do also really like a perpetual cliffhanger every once in a while. Some of my favorite TV show endings are like that. Like House and Frasier, both of those end on really good moments that feel like they're leading to something else, but it's the end of the show. So Windsor, did you read did you get to the end of the book?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I didn't get to post in the channels for the later ones, but I did finish it. So long ago that I haven't had a chance to read them again for weeks.
Right.
So the ones which stick out the most are the first six, I suppose, because I got to see them again, and also they got mentioned during the interview.
Yeah,
But I'm just not sure where to go from that.
well, I wanted to kind of comment on how varied the book is. Like there are definitely some stories that I felt like I didn't know what to make of them. June Bugs was one that I feel like I need to read again, and I'm not in the habit of rereading things, so that's potentially a problem. But yeah, there were definitely some that I felt like I probably need to go back to this and see what else I can get out of it. But
Is Streambugs the one which was a two-parter, or am I thinking of another one?
Junebugs was the longest one. It's in 3 parts.
3 parts.
Yeah. So the first part is the protagonist arriving at this house that is infested with June bugs, even though it's November. The second part is the flashback to what her life was before, and then the third part is where those two things kind of come together with her old partner showing up at the house.
Yeah. I wasn't totally sure what to make of it either. It's another one I'll have to definitely reread.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed just how different every story was.
Yeah,
Like,
it was definitely rich with what I came to understand shortly after getting into reading it was that it's effectively like Aesop's tales or some sort of literally lesser known monsters of the 21st century that and title implies. It's just kind of exploring this speculative fiction, I suppose. And it's just going in all sorts of angles. From the interview, I understood that she was basically doing one story at a time when she was probably in a completely different headspace each time.
right.
I mean, and some of them got edited from previously being published elsewhere, but otherwise, it's still.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what to expect from just a handful.
Yeah, no, it was impossible to know going into each story what it was going to be like. Yeah, so pre-simulation consultation is science fiction, Lady First to Fly is magical realism, Time Cubes again is kind of apocalyptic science fiction. Climbing Nation is
It's
more,
right now.
it's more realist, right? But
Yeah.
like it still has a bit of speculative elements to it, and then
Yeah.
Sandman is again more fantasy, but and so like the first few are all pretty pretty close in terms of genre, at least like it's all like speculative or ish, but then you get later you have The Doll, which felt like a Stephen King story. You have Scissors, which has no speculative elements to it at all. It's just this very like erotic and tense story, but it's like it's just narrating a stage performance. And then you have June Bugs, which is like it has a magical realism element, but that's not what the story really seems to be about. Do you remember Candy was it's just kind of absurd a little bit. So yeah, it's just there. You know, there's a lot of speculative fiction kind of elements in the different stories, but every story is so different. It's just I really like that. A lot of short fiction that I have read, especially when it's from the same author, or if it's a collection like centered on a theme, it's you know maybe the story is about people in different situations, but often they are the same kind of story, and that was not the case here.
Yeah, I noticed that too. No, like I only did read the first four stories, which are admittedly somewhat similar.
Mm-hmm.
But I was mostly noticing like just this huge difference in just like presentation, like the way things were described. Even there just was it was all just like this huge gap. Um, so it was like each story kind of felt like you were leaping into a completely different person's mind, but it's the same author.
Yeah.
And I found really intriguing.
Yeah, no, you're right. The author did a really good job of, um, I guess, not not making every character or every protagonist like a Mary Sue, like a self-insert, which is not necessarily something that happens, but the protagonists or the narrators, at least, they all do feel like very different people. They all feel very unique. I think I've commented on everything that I felt that I needed to comment on. Do either of you have anything that you want to touch on?
I think I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I just think that like what I have read has been really cool. So I will definitely be needing to go back and finish it when I'm free, as my life has gotten a lot more busy than it used to be. But like, I'm absolutely going to be going back to that book, maybe even several times in the future. It was just really, really neat experience.
Yeah, like I said before, I'm not in the habit of rereading things, mostly because I feel like there are so many things that I want to read, and it's the same with like TV shows and movies and games even. Like, I hesitate to re-experience something when I could be going to something that I haven't experienced before, and that I have a very long to be read and to be played pile, you know? So I don't know if I will go back, but I absolutely feel like if I do go back, I will probably get something new out of it that I didn't see before.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I need to go through every story at least once over again, particularly the ones which I didn't immediately resonate as much with.
Yeah, especially the ones that I felt like that didn't feel as strong the first time around. There's probably something there that I missed.
Yeah, I probably missed something in Liddy. That would probably make me enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you to everyone who listens to this after the fact as well. If you're seeing this on YouTube and you are not a member of Shauntal's Library Book Club, you can join the Discord by just clicking the link in the description. Our new reading period is just started. It's September and October 2022. And we're reading The Future of Another Timeline by Annalee Newitz. I have not started it yet, but I'm finishing another book first, but I am very eager to get into this one.
I haven't looked into it yet, but I'll definitely jump onto it.
Yeah, and there's no pressure to like read every book that we do.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. I definitely feel like the community, the conversation is richer when more people are participating, but there is no pressure on any individual to read every book, or certainly not to engage with the discussion, with the conversation on any individual book either. So if you're just looking for recommendations of books that you might like, and you like Pokemon, this is a good place to start, I think. Oh, and our suggestion period for the next reading period for November and December is open now, and so even if you're just coming into the community now, you are more than welcome to suggest what might be our next read. yeah, I think we can leave it there. You guys want to say anything else?
Have a lovely day, people.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Good evening, and depending on what part of the world you're in.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll have another roundtable in a couple of months.
Mhm.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.